"In we go," chuckled Helen as she and Jane linked their arms with mine and propelled me out of the safe darkness of the cool winter evening and into the bright lights of the church hall foyer. I blinked as my eyes adjusted and took in the familiar scene of the Saturday night teenage disco. I'd been here dozens of times and knew many of the kids that were scurrying back and forth, dropping coats off at the cloakroom and buying soft drinks from the makeshift bar in the corner. But the main event was taking place in the hall where an exciting pulsing light show was piercing the darkness, and the beating glam rock music made the wooden floor vibrate. No one paid any special attention to the three prettily dressed girls walking through the door, nor noticed that there was something unusual about the middle girl. I'd never believed in a deity, but pleaded to any that might be listening that the night would go well and that my secret would remain just that. I'll spare you the details, but a few weeks previous I'd managed to seriously upset one of the girls at school with a mixture of boyish bravado and very inappropriate behavior. Helen had burst into tears and the boys in the class had roared with laughter. I hadn't meant it to go that far and was only clowning around, but the poisonous looks I was getting from her friends declared that I'd overstepped the mark. Moving forward a few days, and I knew that I should have smelled a rat when I got the chance of an illicit liaison behind the school bike sheds with a girl called Jane. She was pretty, popular and well out of my league, but in my infatuated mind, I stood a chance. The foolishness of youth. Jane did turn up, and did give me the come on, but a small posse of fifth form girls also appeared. They towered above me and I was quickly subdued. To their credit, they weren't violent, but they were forceful. They didn't hold back with their imagination, the props they'd brought with them, or the clicking of Instamatic cameras that captured my humiliation. For 3 whole days I walked on eggshells expecting my nightmare to go public at any moment, but there was no pointing and laughing, nobody sniggering at me when they went past, nothing. When something finally broke, it was an anticlimax. One of the first formers came up to me in the corridor and simply handed me an envelope with my name on it. I scurried off to somewhere quiet and ripped the envelope open. There was the expected photo of me posing prettily in a pink-checked school dress with all of the other girls, but to my surprise there was a ray of hope. An enclosed letter promised that provided I did everything I was told, the remaining photographs wouldn't be posted on the school notice board. Yes, dear reader, at the tender age of 13, I discovered that the female of the sex were devious and clever. They also had a good grasp on both the mechanics of blackmail and the sweetness of revenge. Their plan was simply that at the end of the month they were going to take me out in public dressed as a girl. If I refused to go, or if anyone discovered I was anything other than a normal teenage girl, then the school notice board would become my tombstone. It was an apt description, as once the photographs of me prancing around like a woofter were public, my life would not be worth living. My friends would ostracize me, the school hard men would probably kick the crap out of me, and the chances of having any chances of finding a girlfriend would be exactly 0. They knew, of course, that I had no chance of pulling this off, or convincing anyone that I was a girl, without help. So Jane and Helen helpfully offered me girl lessons, where I'd be taught everything I needed to know. It was an optional lifeline with strings attached. I had to ask nicely for lessons and do everything I was told. I was to be a happy and enthusiastic learner and to show appreciation for their kind help. It was a stupid idea, just an excuse for them to humiliate me, and it made me feel sick. But I knew that the alternative was worse, and so I found myself at Jane's house each evening and at the weekends learning the gentle art of how to be a girl. Each lesson started with me being made to tell them how excited I was to be learning to be girl, and to ask nicely for their help. They'd then bring out a small selection of their clothes for me to fawn over and beg eagerly to be allowed to try on. They'd then spend a while teaching me which tops went with which skirts and how and when particular things might be worn. I'd then be dressed in an outfit for the rest of the lesson while they taught me how to behave like a girl. It was intense and very interactive, with them asking me which things I preferred, how I felt in particular outfits, and which was the prettiest. They made me practice over and over and ask for help and advice when I wasn't quite sure. Over the weeks I was put in underwear that I'd only ever seen in my mother's catalogs, skirts and tops in outlandishly feminine colors and designs, and soft flowing dresses. I'd catwalked across the room in spindly little sandals with a heel, and clunked awkwardly in girls' pink garish platform shoes. I'd been taught how to be graceful and feminine and drilled in dozens of little mannerisms that would make my debut more realistic, a real crash course on how to be a girl. I hated it. I felt foolish wearing girls' clothes, embarrassed having to act like a girl, but most of all I hated the fact that I had to pretend to like all of this stuff. The amount of stuff they were teaching me made my mind whirl. Did I really need to know all this crap for God's sake? But after a few lessons it dawned on me that apart from a little good-natured teasing when I got something wrong, the girls weren't actually going out of their way to humiliate me. Nor were they being nasty. In a strange way it was as if they really were treating me as a new girl in need of help, rather than a boy they wanted to destroy. I still felt embarrassed prancing around in dresses, and disliked what they were doing to me, but we started to relax more and have a little fun together. One evening they decided to introduce me to dancing. Helen brought out a cassette tape of some of the Top of the Pops hits and the girls began the task of teaching me to dance. Well, actually, I'm not a bad dancer for a guy, but take it from me, girl dancing is much different. It's gentler, smoother and damn it, a lot more girly. To my horror they had me dancing to the Osmonds, David Essex and the Bay City Rollers. Some of the music has a beat, but it's not really bloke music, it's more for the girls to get excited over. Here I was in a flared girly dress, hairband holding back my long flowing locks, and a set of pink and white love beads around my throat. I was learning to shuffle, sway and groove to the music girl style. I started to realize that much of this stuff was sinking in whether I liked it or not. I was developing an eye for a pretty dress and starting to know what accessories would look nice with it. I was instinctively more feminine when I was in a dress and caught myself using girlish mannerisms without thinking about it and realized to my horror that now when we were together, it really was like three girls chatting and giggling together. I was happy that it increased my chances of getting out of this mess alive, but I was terrified that I'd do something blatantly girly at school or something. With just a week before show time, they hit me with a bombshell. They were going to teach me about boys. Well, how stupid, huh? I already know all there is to know about boys. Except I don't, well, not as girls thinks about them anyway. They already had me dressing as a girl, acting like a girl, but that wasn't enough. Now they were going to teach me to think like a girl. Great! They spent hours talking between themselves and to me about boys, explaining what they look for, and what they look at. To my surprise, it isn't all about slim waists and big muscles, nice hair, sexy eyes, cute bottoms, and a dozen other things are also in the running. They talked about personality and how to distinguish between nice guys and creeps. I didn't particularly like the angle of the conversation, but I'll tell you, I got some fantastic insider information that will be of enormous help picking up chicks when all of this is over. Helen produced some pop magazines and they had me discuss each star in turn and discuss their best features and which one I liked the best. I told them that if I was a girl, my favorite would be Donny Osmond. She wrote his name on my arm with a felt pen and surrounded it with a heart like a girly tattoo, which made us all laugh. Throughout the week the training and polishing of my performance continued, as did all the talk about boys. At some point I realized that in the heat of all the discussion I'd dropped the "if I was a girl" prefix from my vocabulary and I was now just discussing who had the cutest bum and the sweetest smile, without appreciating just how feminine I was now sounding. It frightened me. Just before leaving on the Wednesday night we each made a list of all the boys in our class. We agreed to write down ratings for them all for the following evening so we could talk about them. The following day, during a rather boring maths lesson, I found myself trying to decide if Peter Taylor had nicer hair than Bobby Watson and daydreaming about it would be like to kiss one of them. Look, I know what you're thinking and the answer is no, I'm not gay. Nor do I want to be a girl, it's all just a daft game, okay? Well, a game and also a way of stopping those photos from being circulated. Just because I'm getting good at all this girl stuff doesn't mean I like it. That evening we produced our lists and discussion started. We pretty much agreed about the class creeps and laughed as we crossed them off our lists, but our top 3 cuties were all different. We playfully argued for our boys. Peter would be pleased to know that I tried my very best to defend him, or maybe he wouldn't, I don't know. But in any event, it became clear that we all have different tastes in guys, which we all thought was nice because then we wouldn't ever be fighting over the same one. Anyway, eventually the big day arrived and I turned up at Helen's house in a nervous and tense state. The girls were convinced that I was ready to face the world in a dress, but I wasn't sure. There were 101 things that could go wrong, or things I might forget, any one of which could trip me up and out me. The girls assured me that I'd be okay and gently reminded me that I didn't have a choice. The girls had already chosen their outfits for the evening and took me up into Helen's bedroom to choose mine. I thought it was really sweet of her to let me look through her wardrobe and choose whatever I liked. I went for a white bra and panties, both with lace trim and a little bow at the front. Jane stuffed a few tissues in my bra to give me a small mound suitable for the 13-year-old. I chose a white polyester blouse that had long floaty bishop sleeves that gathered and buttoned at the wrist, with an open pear-drop collar and a small row of flowers embroidered across the front. It was feminine and pretty without being too dramatic. We had a discussion about which skirt, but I finally gave my heart to a knee-length lemon skirt that was flared, with 3 tiers and a shiny plastic belt that would hug my waist in. I thought that together with the blouse it gave an almost country girl look and would be perfect to dance in, and be nice and cool at the disco. I chose simple white knee socks, which make Helen chuckle as she said they were nicknamed Virgin socks, and a pair of simple black patent Mary Jane shoes. Helen helped me do my hair, which simply consisted of parting it in the middle, girl style, fluffing it up a bit, and then brushing one side behind my ear. She held it in place by clipping a rather pretty yellow daisy hair slide, which went lovely with my skirt. My final touches were a large chunky sparkly bangle that I borrowed and clipped around my wrist, and a set of pretty multicolored love beads that went around my throat to give my open-necked blouse a little color. The girls hadn't quite finished though. Jane insisted that I wear just a little makeup. She didn't apply much, just light pink lipstick, mascara to make my eyelashes cute when I fluttered them at boys, apparently, and a little blusher, not that I needed any. Helen also sprayed me with some lovely lavender perfume to make me smell nice. That'd take a bit of explaining to my mom when I finally got home. Her final touch was a small heart-shaped I Love Donnie badge that she bought especially for me from the market. She pinned it on my blouse and said it was for good luck. So, dressed prettily, bursting with newly acquired feminine knowledge, but still under threat, I walked between the other girls to the cloakroom to deposit my lilac coat for a few pennies and begin the challenge of a lifetime. Sweet's Teenage Rampage was blaring out of the speakers as we made our way across the hall away from the disco unit so we could hear ourselves talk. The format was the same as usual, with brightly colored lights strobing the darkness, rope lights snaking their way around the speakers, and those weird lava lamp things that projected colored morphing blobs onto the ceiling like something from a sci-fi film. The format was the same too, with small islands of girls inhabiting the middle of the wooden floor, dancing and chatting, and groups of boys lurking in darkness around the outer edges, standing or sitting on plastic stacking chairs. I knew the mindset of the boys intimately. I'd been there. They'd be eyeing the girls intensely and discussing them with bravado with the other boys, but most would be secretly too shy to approach a girl and risk the humiliation of rejection. But this time that wasn't my modus operandi. For the first time in my life I was an island dweller rather than a lurker and was expected to dance in the sunshine for all to see. I trembled. Jane and Helen lead the way and joined a small group of other girls with a nod of recognition and a short exchange. I nodded too, and to my enormous relief got a simple nod of approval back. For now I was accepted. I followed the girls' lead and danced how they did, paused when they did, and tried desperately to remember all my lessons. I felt awkward and out of place, but nobody seemed to notice. I relaxed a little and let myself yield to the music, moving with the beat and feeling my skirt flutter around my knees and the constant annoying clanking of the bangle. I was just a girl dancing, just like any other girl. I saw glances from the shadows and expected to be outed at any moment, but it seemed that I was getting away with it. To be honest, it felt exciting and a little naughty to be fooling people. One or two boys plucked up the courage and came up to talk to a girl. Sure enough, they were either cast aside with a giggle of derision or had their bravery rewarded by being invited to dance or being taken to one side for a chat and possibly more. It became obvious that the girls held the power here and they knew it. I saw Jane and Helen make eye contact with a boy or two and wondered ruefully if it would happen to me. Part of me was fearful that it would happen and that I'd have to respond like a girl, and another, embarrassed to admit it, part was secretly hoping that it might happen and that I might be able to exert the same power that the girls expressed. After a while the heat got to us and we retired to the bar for a mid-session lemonade and packet of crisps. I was then bustled into the girls' cloakroom to freshen up. After doing the business, sitting down of course, I was reminded to check my lipstick as the alien world of girl talk opened up around me. The chatter moved from boys to fashion, to boys and then music, before returning to boys. Finally there was a short pause in conversation. "So, have you seen any cute boys yet, Debbie?" asked Helen, making me the reluctant center of attention. "Oh, not yet," I blustered, like a rabbit in the headlights. "Oh. I thought you were eyeing up that lad in brown jacket," she said. "Yes," added Jane, "I'm sure he noticed you dancing." I blushed. "I might have." "Come on, own up," giggled Helen. "You think he's cute, don't you?" A number of girls were looking at me and I needed to make a feminine response. "Yeah, he is nice," I admitted. Everyone laughed and the tension was gone. I was saved. As we walked back towards the disco hall, Jane pulled me to one side and whispered in my ear, "I want to see you kissing that boy before the night's out, or else." My heart sank. To be honest, I'd overcome many of my fears and was starting to actually enjoy the play acting and fooling the audience, but Jane's threat hit me like a thunderbolt and scared me silly. Dancing around was one thing, but actually kissing another boy was something else altogether and filled me with dread. I didn't know who the guy was but felt sure that if he found out I was a guy, he'd kill me. But then again, if I didn't fulfill Jane's order, I'd be dead on Monday at school. It wasn't so much between a rock and a hard place, as dead tonight or dead on Monday. We resumed dancing and I casually scanned the darkness for signs of the boy, catching my breath when I saw him. He had a crisp white shirt on with the collar folded back over the top of his brown jacket. His tight trousers flared out at the bottom to an inch or so above his black platform shoes. I nearly tripped over my own feet when I realized that I'd been looking at just how tight those trousers were and were looking for bulges at the front. The girls would be proud of me. I felt my face burn with embarrassment. I glanced at the clock. It was 9:15 p.m. and the disco closed at 10 p.m. I had 45 minutes to get a kiss from this guy and realized that however much I hated the idea, I'd better get a move on. He was still standing with his mates adjacent to us, but if he left early I'd be in the shit. The girls and I had become very friendly over the last few weeks, but I knew that I'd hurt Helen and didn't want to find out if she'd really burn me if I failed to complete my task. Jane must have read my mind and between records whispered in my ear, "Flirt with him just like we taught you. Flirt with him like a girl." The guy had his back to me as T-Rex, Elton John and others came and went. I glanced at the clock and it read 9:35. My eyes oscillated slowly between his bum and his long sandy hair brushing the back of his collar as he nodded over some joke with his mates. Slade came on with a foot stomper and I danced my little arse off, desperate for attention from the boys. I stared intensely at that cute little bum, willing him to turn around. He didn't, but his friend noticed me and smiled. Damn it. His friend was quite nice looking too, but wasn't the boy I wanted. Well, you know what I mean. The clock read 9:42 and I felt my heart race when his friend finally nudged him and he looked in my direction. It was now or never. I licked my lips as Helen had taught me, and then looked downwards as if I were shy. He smiled back. I got goosebumps up my back. I was dressed as a chick and had made eye contact with another boy in a disco. What the hell was I doing? I continued dancing and he turned back to his friends to chat. Look at me, I'm the girl of your dreams, I wanted to scream at him. Another record played and another 3 minutes off the clock. From the corner of my eye I could see Jane and Helen watching me, expressions a mixture of surprise, encouragement and unspoken threat. Eventually my dream boy looked at me again and I went for it. I fluttered my mascara-covered lashes and gave him my prettiest smile. He said something to his mate and walked towards me. I felt a weird mix of relief, elation and abject terror. All kinds of possibilities running through my mind, and not all of them good. Hi, he said, what's your name? Debbie, I said in my very best girly voice. Want to dance, Debbie? I bit my lip and nodded. He moved in close and started to dance with me, surprisingly smooth and sensuous for a guy. The DJ had turned down the booming tempo for the latter part of the disco. I smiled at him and studied his face in the subdued lights. His wavy hair cascaded down each side of his face, framing an almost baby-looking complexion. He looked handsome, in fact a real girl might consider him cute. But he was taller than me and quite muscular, which frightened me. I prayed again to my newly recruited deity that the boy would see nothing but a pretty girl in front of him. The DJ started with the smoochy records and I noticed 1 or 2 of the girls were pairing up with their boys for their last chance of an evening's cuddle. He moved towards me and just like the other girls, I found myself wrapped in a boy's arms. He was gentle and swayed in time with the music and without choice I went with him. He said, you smell nice. I looked up and smiled. He smelled of leather from his jacket and something else too. Yes, that was it, he was wearing aftershave, probably nicked from his dad, which made him smell strong and masculine. It was a stark contrast with my own flowery and feminine perfume. He felt masculine too, looking down on me with his strong arms draped around my shoulders, guiding me in time with the music. I slipped my arms around his waist beneath his jacket and felt his slim muscular body. Then without really thinking about who I was and where I was, I put my head on his chest and cuddled up to him, just as the other girls were doing with their guys. My emotions were all over the place with the battered remains of my boyish pride reaching up to the surface, begging me to run away from this foolishness. And yet I felt so delicate and so feminine in my little flimsy little outfit, a scared and vulnerable little girl. He stroked my hair reassuringly, as if he somehow knew my turmoil. I closed my eyes and cuddled with my boyfriend to the fading notes of Donny Osmond's Puppy Love, and then in the moment of quiet, like a scared little kitten I asked, "What's your name?" He put a finger under my chin, gently lifted my head up, and looked at me with gorgeous blue eyes. "David," he said softly. And then he did it. He lowered his head and put his soft, sweet lips against mine and kissed me. Pleasure ran through me and there was nothing I could do about it. I felt so feminine, excited and alive. Did all girls feel this wonderful when they got their very first kiss? David opened his lips slightly and slipped his warm tongue against my lips, gently probing and tickling as if asking politely for permission. It was delightful and I wanted to scream his name and tell the world that this was my boyfriend, but instead I just parted my lips submissively and let him in. He was soft and gentle, running his tongue first across my teeth and then teasing and playing with my tongue, caressing me and making me squeal like a little girl with pleasure. He held my head and pulled me close, stoking and my hair with his fingers as our tongues danced together. I had a mouthful of boy and he tasted so sweet. I wanted more and I sucked gently to encourage him, coaxing his tender tongue deeper and deeper. And then it happened. A wave of pleasure shot through me and I gave a little involuntary shudder. I felt my knickers become very wet indeed. Thankfully, David didn't seem to notice, nor feel my face burning with embarrassment. He just continued to kiss me tenderly as if there was only the two of us in the world. I snuggled up to him and wanted the enchantment to last forever, but the music began to fade out and the house lights started to come up. Reluctantly, he withdrew and we stood smiling at each other for what seemed an age. Now the lights were up, he looked even cuter than before and his lovely smile made me feel weak and giddy. He planted a little kiss on my forehead and said, "You're sweet. Can I see you again?" I asked. "Next week?" he said. My heart leapt and I grinned like a Cheshire cat. Yes, I'd like that. David went back to rejoin his friends and no doubt regale them with tales of how he'd scored with a hot chick. The girls rejoined me from across the room where they'd been observing everything, and Jane reached into her bag and handed me a familiar-looking envelope. "We don't need these anymore. You're a girl now." Helen smiled at me. "Well, did you enjoy yourself?" she asked. I blushed. Yes, it was lovely, really lovely. "And Helen?" I whispered, "Thank you." "Oh, we're not finished with you yet." "You're not?" "Nope. We've got to get you some pretty clothes of your own. You've got to look extra pretty now you've got a boyfriend."